Reviews are coming out for the documentary Paul Reubens on Paul Reubens, I think was the name of it. And if you don't know Paul Reubens, he was a massive, massive star in the 90s. He played Pee Wee Herman in Pee Wee's Playhouse, Pee Wee's Big Adventure. He had a handful of movies. And if you weren't alive at the time, this all came crashing down because he was caught allegedly masturbating in a porno theater, because that's how you got your porn back in the day. You had to go to a theater around 1992, and he never really spoke much about it. I mean, most of his life, he had kept Paul Reubens separate from Pee Wee Herman. Nobody even knew who played Pee Wee Herman until that arrest. And unfortunately, making it worse, he had really long hair and a scraggly beard. It was not flattering to saying you're not a pervert, basically. um, his career was heavily impacted. He made one more movie. He had this revival in the early 2010s, and he had a tour, etc. And then he kind of faded away, and we didn't know why, but it was because he had cancer, and he died, I think, 2 years ago now. And very, very, very sad. So right now you're probably going, okay, cool. Why is this on Friended Gems, your queer and trans friendly site? Because despite never speaking on it, at least until what I could find around the time he died, it was heavily assumed in the later years that Paul Reubens was queer. To this day, I don't think, outside of if anything's in this documentary, we ever knew who his partners were, what exactly he was. I have no idea. In fact, the LA Times labels it homosexual, but I don't know if that was actually from his own lips or they're just assuming. So I'm not sure. We'll go with queer. And all of a sudden, so many things click into place because Paul Reubens' story is a story that could only be in the 90s, and it almost ruined this man's life. And it ruined his career for the longest time. Definitely ruined him financially. And it's all because this man was queer. And that wasn't a part that was known at the time, at least spoken out loud in the media. It's also a story of how anything associated with being sexual, like today, porn is like, oh my God, that's, you can probably find it here on TikTok somehow, I'm sure. Porn is everywhere. Masturbation is everywhere. It's no longer shameful to be sexual. But in the early 90s, especially if we're talking mainstream pop culture and heteroness, oh no. In fact, this is how bad it was. They somehow moved this. It was a porn film between two heterosexual performing actors. They played this as he was a pedophile because he had a child's TV show, and Pee Wee Herman was mostly aimed at children, although it did not start that way. In fact, it started quite the opposite. He created Pee Wee Herman based on the 50s TV shows and his love of that and kitsch and the Groundlings, Los Angeles, and it was very adult. That's how it was first performed. So it was a whole bizarre journey to begin with, and it just kept getting more bizarre. Then I think it was 2002 or 2004, the LAPD raided his house. They had done something similar to actual pedophile Michael Jackson, and they found vintage erotica from 50s and earlier and claimed this as child porn. And he pled, I think, no contest, and he had to be on the register for 3 years, and he really fucking resented that. And in fact, he resented it so much that literally on his deathbed, he recorded how he felt about that, and that's in this documentary, which I cannot wait to see. But while child porn is very, very bad, and fuck child pornographers and pedophiles, it is hard to tell sometimes in vintage stuff. I seen an honest to God magazine on eBay, and I have I don't follow vintage erotica. Sometimes it pops up, but it's not something I'm looking for. And they had, like, in the 1920s, and this continued through the 50s, artist magazines where they could show nude people, including sometimes big stars. And that was for, sketching purposes. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Honest to God, this eBay seller it was half movie magazine, half, sketching. And they had a picture of this very old star, Lucille Rickson, that at the time was 14. And the picture, after I did the math, she was 12 in. She is fully nude. It's not sexual beyond her being nude, but it's placed along with, that wink, wink, nudge, nudge of actual adults. And I could very easily believe possessing that could get you that kind of charge. The seller obviously didn't know, or I don't think he would have posted the picture on eBay. So, that's a really vague area, man. But no, okay. So here's where this all ties into me and my work. I was, I think 4. I was probably 3 to 4 when Paul Reubens was arrested. And despite being 3 to 4, I used to watch the local news, or the CBS news, because I like Dan Rather. I know. I was so autistic, because I do remember, like, when Jim Henson died, and that was around that time. And I didn't really understand it. I was like, what did he do? He was in a theater and you arrest him. Now, of course, I'm a toddler. I'm not going to understand. I had everything Pee-wee. I lived and breathed Pee-wee. Pee-wee, Muppet Babies, and Alf the cartoon. Yes, there was a cartoon. Fantastic theme song, by the way. That was my mother, along with the Disney movies. My mother didn't watch any of that shit. She just put it on because it's a cheap babysitter and she hates her child. And that's just how it was. And, I even remembered parts of these things that I am surprised to know are memories. Because, I don't obviously remember well, thanks PTSD. And based on the past, it's like, oh, wow, that stuck with me through 30 years. Jesus Christ, almost 40 years. So when this happened and he was arrested, my whore mother, who is awful for many, many reasons, but let's just, it's not quite the beginning, but it was a pivotal moment, banned all Pee-wee. I was not allowed to watch Pee-wee while it was still being broadcast. Shortly, it'd be pulled from CBS. And she got rid of all my Pee-wee stuff. I had all the figurines. I had the Playhouse. I had Cherry. And her excuse, Cherry stuck around the longest. And her excuse was, oh, you're too fat for that. And my 225-pound ass could sit on Cherry, which I paid a minimum to get back. So, fuck you, mother. Fuck you very much. In fact, she was going off, because this is how it worked back then, gossip. Somehow her sister or her friend heard that, like, oh, he had an episode where he looked up Miss Yvonne's dress. And I was like, she literally cited this to me. I said, mother, that has never, ever happened on Pee-wee's Playhouse. I have not done a full rewatch, but I feel confident in still saying that. But I did learn only when he died, because I watched the grown-up Groundling special. It was in that. That was not for children. And, now that we know he was queer, it kind of makes it all a little more, So thank you, Paul Reubens, for making me who I am. And I'm sorry you had to go through that. But I'm very glad you're getting the final word. The documentary will air on HBO sometime in the spring. When I find out when, I will post about it.